Hello, this is on. Good, excellent. I've got to warn you before I start this that I have had 4 or 5 cups of coffee this morning, and that was a bad idea. And if I'm done, in 15 minutes, it's the coffee's fault. If I'm speaking so fast you cannot understand me, all wave and slow down or something, and I'll stop and drink water or something. I'm here to talk about how to create the perfect prototype. I am Phil Nash, that's me, slightly before a haircut I just had. I work at a company called Mint Digital. We're a kind of creative agency, product agency kind of thing. We do client work, we do our own products, and I will mention a couple of those a bit later, all for good reason. Just before we start, I want to just talk about what I'm talking about as a prototype. For me, it's a web application, it's a Rails application. We're all Ruby developers here, I'm pretty sure. And we're talking about a prototype application. That's something that we can create swiftly, basically in order to test out a proposal, to test out something that we think is a good idea and that we should maybe make a real application. So a prototype, for me, is not it's not polished, it's not a fully featured thing, and it's not production ready. I'm just going to refresh this browser for a second because I think I've lost all my things that do that. Yes, there we go. It's not polished, it's not fully featured, and it's not production ready. But to me, a prototype is something that is single-minded. It's got a focus, a purpose. It's well thought out. I'm not talking about just throwing anything together. And it is something that we are ready to put in front of some users to test and use. So that to me is what a prototype is. And prototyping is hard. That's why I feel like I have to talk about it. Because doing all of that stuff has its issues. And so what we're going to talk about today is the problems that I think there are with prototypes and making prototypes, how we at Mint came to a solution to deal with this kind of thing, and then also a little bit about how to code a perfect prototype, because that's what we all really want to know. So prototyping has problems. I feel there are some there are some issues with it, and that prototypes can easily slip. I've already said we need to have a kind of single focus for things, but prototypes have the when you're given an idea by a client or maybe within your company, you can easily kind of move away from that original idea. You can I'll talk about that in a sec. There's bloat, and there's a lack of focus. Slip basically is down to the fact there's a lack of deadline. Hard decisions get put off, so you're kind of you start building this prototype, and things happen, and things slip, and you never get done, and you need to ask a question. Somebody has the answer to that question somewhere, but it's hard to get hold of them. All that kind of thing, and things just slip away. Deadlines are great. I never thought I'd say that. I never thought I'd say it to a room full of people. I thought I might whisper it quietly to myself maybe one time. That's a great deadline. Deadlines are great because they stop all of that. And that's what I think about deadlines. We'll get back to those deadlines. Prototypes can easily bloat. Again, if you've not got this deadline, you've not got somewhere to go with this you've not got a hard launch date, basically. So you can end up kind of going, hey, well, we got this far. Let's put this bit in and add this bit on and this, and then it's just another piece of enterprise software that you didn't mean to make. So you end up with the extra unnecessary features that are unnecessary to test your prototype. These are features that maybe are required when you have a fully featured product. And finally, a lack of focus. So if you're tasked with building a prototype at a company, you probably have other things on your plate as well. There are other priorities. There are things you should do. And again, if you get to that bit where there are decisions that need to be made, you can't make the decision, somebody else can't make the decision, it gets put off, you go do something else. The whole thing just rolls up and rolls on, and you never get anything done. So prototypes are hard. For us at Mint, we wanted to find a solution to this, but actually the solution kind of found us, which is kind of lucky, I suppose. And this is, I want to talk to you about this because we all want to know what's going on here. So this is Mint Digital in about 2008. There is one person in this room who's in this picture. Right here, Mr. Adam Rogers, who is speaking tomorrow morning, if you're up early enough. This is Mint Diligent 2008. It's just before I joined, sadly. I'm on the T-shirts that they're wearing, but I wasn't part of the company at the time. I snuck in there. And this is what, every year since 2008 in kind of February or March, Mint goes away, takes the whole company away. We're in London and New York, and we all fly into London and then go down to the southwest of England, and we book in a hotel, and we make we have what we call a web app weekender. This used to be about building web apps, and it used to be on the weekend. We now do it during the week, and we can do anything. It's just kept its name for fun. Or I like to keep its name. It's also getting called 4 days to launch and other things these days. But we call it the web weekend. I call it the web weekender, and it's about us going to the southwest of England, splitting into 3 teams, and taking a brief and building out little prototypes, building projects. It's about hacking. It's me hacking. That's this year. We were trying to take on education as our brief. It's also about going to the pub. If you saw me last night, you'll see me tonight at the Bloat. You know, I like going to the pub. It's sometimes about dressing gowns. This was my first web app weekender that I went to, and on the second night it was, a bunch of large boxes turned up at dinner, and then suddenly we were all wearing dressing gowns, and it looked like a very bizarre spa. That up in the top left is our CEO. That's our head of agency right there. So, you know, they all get involved with the dressing gowns. But it's still mostly about hacking away on things and making up products and little ideas and applications. And it takes place over 4 days now. And it's quite a surprise the kind of things we get done in those 4 days. So it's a hack week. It's a hack week. I mean, have you guys been on hack days, hack weeks? Yeah. Fun? I really love them. So much fun. Because you get that kind of start as well, where you start the hack week where you've got nothing. That empty kind of text editor just ready to, or maybe, you know, new Rails project or something, just ready to go and pump code into. And that's exciting. So some of the things we've done over the years, from that original photo, Snapper was a hack that came out of that. That was a application where you could make your own photo game, I believe. This kind of was done in 2008, 6 months after the first iPhone came out, so it didn't quite catch on at any rate at all. The year after, the first year I went there, the product of the dressing gowns was a game called What the Tweet, in which in real time you had to guess against other players what the missing word from a tweet from a famous person was. It was really fun and definitely should have won that year. This is a competition, sorry. We get judged on these things, and that should have won. Snapper didn't win. What the Tweet didn't win. Rafiki was the first year we ever did iOS apps at Mint for our web app weekender. So a bunch of us all went away and never built an iOS app before, and we came out with things. And Rafiki was basically like a Tamagotchi that was a football player. You had to keep him training. This is the year of the World Cup, so you had to keep him training, get him into Brazil, that kind of thing. Quizzibles. I promised my other colleague who's here, Paul Fedori, that I'd put Quizzibles into this talk because he built that, and that won the year afterwards. This is Quizzibles. Basically based on a quotation site called Quotables that we made, and so you had to guess which character the quote came from. You should all hurl abuse at Paul when you see him later because he's gone home to bed. I put it in the slides and everything. And we actually got serious after this. Like, these are all kind of fun things. And they didn't have kind of a purpose. They didn't have a real end game. It was basically for the judging that we were doing. So the year after we did Quizzibles, we actually, the brief we set the year after that was to create a business in 4 days. And this is one of the businesses that came out of it. Actually, the only one that carried on. This is Foldable Me. It's what we do nowadays. And other than just using my face to sell stuff, which is what's happening here, we make little cardboard avatars of yourself. You can make them up in a lovely big 3D CSS tool, which is really cool. I encourage you to look at the code for that, as I didn't write it. But it's, if you like 3D CSS and you like spinning little square guys, little cubey guys around, it's fun. But we said to ourselves, the target was to launch a business within 4 days. Now, we didn't launch this in 4 days, of course. We're prototyping things. But this is a real business now, and it doesn't look that different to the site we had at the end of 4 days, which is somewhat quite impressive. So our hack day is the answer to prototyping. There's a little bit more to it, actually, because, as I said, we didn't have our focus. We didn't have these things that we were necessarily trying to do at the end of the day. In fact, when we were doing Affordable Me, we were really aiming to be making money after 4 days, which is nuts with a physical product. Don't try and do that. So the story kind of continues, and after we built Affordable Me, we actually thought it was quite a good introduction to development, to digital agency kind of work. And we actually, we worked with a advertising company to kind of take them through a web app weekender and kind of deeply immerse them in that kind of digital process in a very short space of time. And so using smaller teams of kind of 2 developers and a designer and a group of people from the advertising company, we built, and to a brief that they would have to face, we built some prototypes of potential stuff that could be pitched, could be tested, and out of that came incredibly tightly focused prototypes. There were 2 developers and 1 designer, and we were trying to manage a bunch of people who didn't know what they were doing. So we didn't have much time to be building stuff. So things came up very tightly focused. There was also a very good kind of agreement within the team that from the original brief to the way you answered it was right and the right path for you, right path for us at the time. And at the end of it, when we were pitching these things at the end, there was a very clear proposition. Just been trolled by a Nyan cat. Thank you. We had a very clear proposition at the end of it, and there was one thing and one thing that we were showing people. There was not a big bloated piece of software. So once we'd done this as a training thing, we thought, can we actually do this with a client? Can we take a real project or a real idea and prototype it in this very short space of time, 4 days, with the client there? And we did. And what we had, in that case, we had 4 days. You start on Monday, you finish on Thursday, and you give a presentation at the end of Thursday with what you've done. So that's a massive deadline. They're great. You ended up with a very tight set of features because we didn't have time to make them all, so why would you? And there was a very clear focus. So, and this is what we came up with in the first one. This is Purple Ninja. It's for a charity called Be Inspired. And the site, or the proposition that we had to come up with, something we had to prototype, was a site that would get children of the age of 12 and 13 interested in volunteering and doing kind of community stuff. And this is what we did. Like, there had been some pre-testing, there'd been some proposition testing with users, and we had the main seed of the idea, and we needed to prototype it and prototype it quickly. And we came up with Purple Ninja. Do missions get prizes? This thing was put in front of real children, and they didn't like it. We were wrong. But that's fine, because it took us 4 days to make that. If it had taken us 6 months and we'd have charged them an awful lot of money for it, and then it was wrong, they'd be pretty pissed. It's a charity. We're not going to steal money from charity. So that's what we made. So if we look back at the problems we had with prototype, we had slip, bloat, and lack of focus. They're all there. That's all gone when you take 4 days with a single mindset and a very small, dedicated team to deal with it. And that, I believe, is the answer to the problems with prototyping. Hack weeks with a purpose, hack weeks with a group of people who can answer your questions. When you say, should this, how should we talk about the children in this particular app? I mean, this is an incredibly difficult thing to deal with children of 12 and 13 because we don't really know how they use the internet. So we kind of had to make those decisions quickly and work out whether they were right. And we made the decisions with the stakeholders and the people who are absolutely engaged in creating the app for Be Inspired. So they're all gone. All these problems are gone. You can just a dedicated, focused team in a tiny amount of time can make some incredible things. So the perfect prototype, yes, that's a more dedicated team. I'm ahead of my slides, sorry. Fast decision making, this is absolutely key. It's one of those problems with the slipping and the fact that you can get away, the product can get away from you, and you just make those decisions there and then. And you have to take that clear proposition from the start all the way through to the end, not muddle it up, not bloat it up, just get to the point. And you have to be able to test it, you have to be able to put it in front of people. And as I said, we put that Purple Ninja app in front of children, and they didn't quite get it, and that's fine. We've done other projects since where we've put it in front of users, and it's clicked, and I think we're going to go on to build that new application. So where are we? Coding the perfect prototype. I lied. You can't code the perfect prototype, especially not in 4 days. Come on, it's 4 days. But then, of course, no software is really perfect. You can take 6 months over something, and you're not going to get all the bugs out, are you? There will be one bug. There will be one thing wrong, or many. But in 4 days, not a chance. What this really is kind of, coding the best prototype you can in a very short space of time, which is much less of a snappy title. Sadly. But it's the truth. That's the truth. We need to get through this. So, we're here at a Ruby conference, and obviously, Rails. It gets us going, gets us a big head start. So I think, we should just get on this. Obviously, we're using Rails, but everything, Devise, Active Admin, Rails Admin, whatever you've got to do admin things, you have to worry about that. Just deal with the problem at hand. Come on, jQuery. I don't care if there's one line of real JavaScript in the application. Have jQuery in there to make it easier. Bootstrap, no, actually don't use Bootstrap. Have a designer. It's going to make a real... Don't use Bootstrap. Cancel that. We don't have time for new things. We don't have time for new things. If you're going to build an application and you're saying, this needs to be really fast, snappy, responsive, this would be perfect for Angular or Ember or something. If you've never used those before and you've got 4 days, don't start. Terrible idea. But do use all the things you do know, because that's just going to make it easy for yourself. You have to make it easy for yourself. And even more, like templates and plugins, I suppose, actually, kind of goes along with this. You kind of need to use everything you've got within the framework. So I'm not just talking about clicking Rails new, but hey, go Rails new with a template, and have Devise already in there and Active Admin in there, and your admin system set up and roles set up for your users, because you're probably going to need that. Everything needs users, really. If it doesn't, you probably don't need Rails. You probably just could write some HTML and be done with it. So templates. We actually have something slightly different to this. We have a project that we are ready to just go with, like something you can copy and go, run the migrations, and you're off. I think we're changing this to a template kind of structure, but we're just ready to go with an application that is set up for the way that we at Mint, the way that I know how to build an application. And I'm sure you've all built Rails applications, so you have a bunch of things that you know you'll want, know you'll need, and that you use. Have them all ready for you. Have a project or a template that you can just start with. And concentrate on the domain problem, the problem at hand. Concentrate on getting kids picking up litter, which is, it's not a technical problem. It's something that it's the prototype. That's what we're building the prototype for. Testing. Hack days. You guys said you've been to hack days, right? Who's been to a hack day and written tests for their hack? 2 people. Yes, at the last hack day we were at, you were writing tests, and I was playing with the audio API. Didn't write tests for that. But when you've got a 4-day, you've got a prototype, test all the fucking time. I mean, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir again in the way that, we're all doing Rails, we're all Ruby community, we're all test-driven development all the way. But you kind of, when you're doing a hack, when you're doing something like that, it feels like it kind of takes some of the rules away, maybe, and that you can maybe get away without writing some tests, and it will be quicker to just write the code. It's not. It never is. It's not in a real project. It's not in a project that you've got to talk about on Thursday to a bunch of people that never heard about it before. Confidence, even in hastily written code, I think is the important thing here. If you've written something quickly, but you wrote a test for that quickly as well, assuming it all passes and runs and does what you meant to, you can be confident that's not going to change, even if you change the entire rest of the code base the next day, because that's what you're going to do. And yeah, writing code without breaking things, or at least knowing when you've broken something else, because this is all the same stuff for building real applications as opposed to prototypes, except you should be doing it if you've got a very short space of time. Maybe not a 24-hour hack day. I mean, come on. Deploying. Deploy all the fucking time? Does that? I do think we want to be deploying as often as possible, even in this case of a prototype, because you've got those people in that room with you, or in the case of this, you've got those people in the room with you who want to see the progress, who have opinions on the next step in that prototype. And so getting things up and getting things out as quickly as possible is absolutely key. And you don't want to be there on the last day before you present this thing to anybody else who's interested, struggling to get it online. Exactly that. I mean, we're a big fan of the Ship It Squirrel at Mint Digital. Most of our Campfire and now HipChat messages are probably Ship It. Most of our GitHub comments are Ship It. We basically don't say anything else to each other. Unless they shouldn't ship it and it's wrong code and you should just stop shipping it. Don't ship that. Probably, but in terms of a quick prototype, get it out there. Even if it is broken, actually, keep getting it out there so that people can see where you are, see where you're going, and see what the progress is. Start shipping from day one. Make it easy to ship and be aware of the limitations of the server. So we do it on Heroku because that's damn easy, right? But on Purple Ninja, on that site there, I was not aware of the limitations, or I wasn't thinking about them, because I didn't start shipping from day one. I started shipping from halfway through the morning of day 4, which is a bad idea. And of course, we started shipping, and then we uploaded some stuff and some pictures, and then we deployed again, and then all the pictures went away, because, that was a terrible, terrible idea. And then we deployed just before we presented, and then we uploaded all the pictures again. Be aware of those limitations. Get it right. Again, it's all down to kind of using the kind of thing that you're comfortable with, the kind of thing you already know. If you do already know how to ship to your own servers, you have your own setup, do that. And you already know the limitations. You already know what's going on there. If you're going to do it to Heroku, you know that those images are not going to hang around when you deploy the next time, so sort out S3 or something. That's a note to me, really. It's a personal thing. Get that right, Phil. So we talked about hack days and hack days and hack weeks. Hack days and hack weeks are very different because in a hack day, you've got 24 hours and you're on stage after that talking to a bunch of people who also haven't had any sleep, and you're kind of lost up in the moment. When you're building, if you've got the time, 4 days to build a prototype in, it is a marathon, not a sprint. So get some sleep. It's 4 days, not 24 hours. Get some sleep. At the last hack day I was at, which was a huge hack day at the O2 in London, which has something like 500 people there, and I ended up sleeping on the floor of what's essentially a gig venue for an hour. That was unpleasant. So we've got 4 days. You don't have to stay up all night every night, because that's just not going to work. You're going to write some terrible code. Things are going to break, your tests will break, everything will go wrong, and then you have to tell somebody about it on the last day. It's much better to write good code, not more code. This is a prototype that needs to work, not needs to be thousands of lines of code. And then throw it all away. Not before you test it with any users. It would be terrible to get to that point in our stage where we go, and this is what it is. Okay, RM, RF, gone. You do have to be prepared to throw it all away, though. it was written in 4 days. This is not your best code. It's not my best code. All your decisions will be wrong. If you try and launch that site as a real site for real users without supervision or proper testing, it is all going to be a massive pain forever. And once you're finished with the prototype, you can iterate on the ideas in that prototype, go back to it and change bits, but never try and launch the actual prototype. I showed you Foldable Me earlier. An awful lot of that code was from our original prototype. And Adam hates me because of it, because he had to manage that project for a number of months. And none of it works. No, it does. Sorry, it does work. I mean, we fixed it. It works now. Don't launch your prototype. Please. So, to code up the best prototype you can in a short space of time, use all the frameworks, use all the templates. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Use jQuery plugins as well. Again, if you have to do something simple, don't write the JavaScript for yourself. Get somebody else to do it. You don't have the time. But write tests for it. Write tests for it because that means you know what you're doing and you know you can be right about it. Ship it all the time, every day, every hour. Go to sleep, though. It's much better for you. And your code. And then iterate on that prototype. And then when you come to when you've got the final real idea, you know exactly how you're going to do it. Throw it all away and start again, because then you can write a real application. So, to create the best prototype, take that focus over a short space of time. It doesn't have to be 4 days. That is what works for us. Have that deadline. It doesn't have to be 4 days, but that works for us. Have the people that make the decisions there in the room with you, because if you don't have that, you are not going to get it done in 4 days. Or you're going to get something done that is not what you intended, or not what they intended. Communication is massively important. Give yourself all the head starts you can. Yeah, if you don't want to start with Rails new. That's far too far behind. You'll spend the first day getting everything in place. Spend days before that getting everything in place for every time you do this. And every time you create a real application as well. It's so useful for everything. And finally, ship it. Get it out in front of people. Get it in front of users. Test it with people. Test it. And I might well have gone incredibly quickly. I might have spoken a bit quick. I don't know. I'm actually not checking the time. But that is all I have to say about prototypes. Although, yeah, so thank you very much for coming. And do we have any questions?